3 years ago, I said yes to a project I had zero time for, zero interest in, and absolutely no business taking on. I spent the next 4 months resenting every hour I spent on it. And the person who asked me, they never even noticed I was miserable. They just thought I was being helpful. That's the trap. We think saying yes buys us respect. Sometimes, it does the opposite. It buys us months of quiet resentment that nobody else can see. I started thinking about this differently after learning more about Japanese communication and the way some people in Japan approach requests, boundaries, and disagreement. And what surprised me was this: saying no doesn't always have to sound like rejection. You can decline a request without rejecting the person. You can protect your time without being rude. And sometimes, a thoughtful no is actually kinder than a yes you never had the capacity to keep. By the end of this video, you'll have 4 practical ways to say no, exact phrases you can use this week, and a simple way to decide whether a request deserves a place in your life at all. Let's get into it. I want to tell you about a story I came across while learning more about Japanese communication. It was about a woman named Yuki who ran a small design studio in Kyoto. She had a business, children, and a schedule that was already full, but somehow, she seemed to have something many busy people don't have: boundaries. The person describing her asked how she managed to handle so many responsibilities without constantly feeling overwhelmed. Her answer was simple: I don't do everything. I just say no to almost everything that doesn't need me. That sentence stayed with me because many of us were taught that saying no is what damages relationships. It's the awkward moment, the disappointed expression, the uncomfortable silence afterward. So instead, we say maybe. We say, let me see. We say, I'll try. And sometimes, we say yes even though we already know the answer should be no. Then we spend the next few weeks trying to escape a commitment we should never have accepted. The problem isn't always that we don't know how to say no. Sometimes, we simply haven't learned how to say it clearly. And clarity is important. A vague no leaves the other person guessing. Are you annoyed? Are you actually busy? Should they ask again later? Could they convince you? A clear no closes the door respectfully and lets everyone move forward. That's one of the ideas I find interesting in Japanese communication. The goal isn't necessarily to make every interaction comfortable for 5 seconds. The goal is to handle the situation with consideration. And sometimes, consideration means being honest early instead of agreeing now and disappointing someone later. The first technique is simple. When you're declining a request, explain the real constraint without making the other person feel like the problem. Watch the difference. Someone asks you to help with a project, and you say, sorry, I can't. I'm busy. That's not terrible, but busy is vague. The other person has no idea what that actually means. They may think, they just don't want to help me. Instead, you could say, I've got 3 deadlines stacked this week, and I can't give this the attention it deserves. Now the reason is clear. The problem is your current capacity, not their value, not the importance of the relationship, not the quality of their request. Your schedule simply doesn't allow you to do it properly. Here's another example. Someone invites you to a weekend trip, but you don't want to go. You could say, I can't. I'm busy. Or you could say, I've had a rough week and I need this weekend to rest properly. I won't be able to join you this time, but I'd love to come along another time. The second answer is still a no, but it gives the other person something important. Clarity. And the key is honesty. Don't invent a fake emergency. Don't create an elaborate story. You don't need a 5-minute explanation. One honest sentence is usually enough. You can say, I don't have the bandwidth to take this on properly right now. Or, my schedule is already full, and I don't want to commit to something I can't do well. Or simply, that doesn't fit my priorities right now. You are not attacking the person. You're describing your situation. And sometimes, that small difference completely changes how the no feels. The second technique is to ask whether the request actually earns a place in your life before you answer. Before you say yes, ask yourself 3 questions. First, does this move something I genuinely care about forward? Maybe you're trying to build a business, improve your health, spend more time with your family, learn a new skill, or simply create a calmer life. Does this request support something that actually matters to you? Second, are you really the right person for this, or are you simply the easiest person to ask because you usually say yes? This is an important question because being capable of doing something doesn't automatically mean you should be the one doing it. And third, do you have the energy to do this properly? Not, can I technically squeeze it into my calendar? But, can I do this well without damaging everything else? Those are very different questions. Imagine someone asks you to join an extra project at work. It doesn't support your current goals. You're not particularly good at that type of work, and you already know it will drain the energy you need for your main responsibilities. That's a strong sign that you should probably decline. You might say, I appreciate you thinking of me, but looking at my current priorities, I don't think I'm the right person for this. I need to stay focused on my current responsibilities, and I think someone with more experience in this area might be a better fit. That's not selfish. It's honest. And there's another benefit. When you stop accepting every task that comes your way, your attention becomes less scattered. You can do fewer things better, and your yes becomes more meaningful because people know that when you commit, you actually mean it. The third technique is for situations where the stakes are higher. Your manager, a client, a business partner, or someone whose opinion matters to you. In these situations, people often make one of two mistakes. They either panic and say yes because they're afraid of disappointing someone, or they give a sudden no that sounds dismissive. There's an idea in Japanese business culture called nemawashi. The word is often translated as preparing the roots. It originally refers to preparing a tree before transplanting it. The broader idea is that important changes work better when the ground has been prepared beforehand. Now, nemawashi is not literally a technique for saying no, but the communication lesson is useful. When a decision affects someone else, don't simply drop the conclusion on them. Help them understand how you reached it. Imagine your manager gives you a major report with a tight deadline. Instead of immediately saying, I can't do it, you could say, I understand why this report matters for the quarter. I also want to be honest about my current workload. I'm already in the middle of the client launch, and if I split my attention between both projects, I don't think I can do either one properly. Then you can continue, I'd rather be honest now than promise something and deliver rushed work later. Would it make sense to bring in someone else who has more capacity for the data side? Notice what happened. You didn't simply reject the request. You showed the collision. You explained the consequences, and you offered a possible solution. By the time you reached your conclusion, the other person could see the logic behind it. This is often much more effective than simply saying, I don't want to. You don't have to apologize for having limits, and you don't have to pretend the request is unimportant. You can say, this matters. And because it matters, I don't want to promise more than I can realistically deliver. That is a professional answer. The fourth technique may be the easiest of all. Don't answer every request immediately. A lot of modern work and social culture encourages instant answers. Someone asks you for something, you feel pressure, and you say yes. Then, a few hours later, you realize you never actually wanted to agree. So create a pause. You can say, let me think about it and get back to you tomorrow. Or, I'd like to check my schedule before I give you an answer. Or, I'm flattered you asked. Can I take a day to think about it properly? This isn't rude. In fact, it often signals that you're taking the request seriously. Then use that time. Check your actual calendar. Think about your priorities. Ask yourself the 3 questions from earlier. Do I want this? Am I the right person for it? Do I have the capacity to do it properly? Then, if the answer is no, you can say, I really appreciate you thinking of me. I gave it some thought, and I don't think I can make the commitment this requires right now. That's a decision, not a panic reaction. And a thoughtful no is often much better than a rushed yes that falls apart later. Here's something that can make saying no much easier. Decide what matters to you before the requests arrive. For example, you might say, this month, my main focus is completing this project, improving my health, and spending more time with my family. Now, when a new request comes in, you don't have to make an emotional decision from scratch. You can simply ask, does this fit the priorities I already chose? If it doesn't, your answer becomes much easier. You can say, I'm focusing on a few specific priorities this month, so I don't think I can take this on right now. You are not inventing a new excuse. You are following a decision you already made. And the clearer you are about your priorities, the easier it becomes to protect them. Without priorities, every new request can feel equally important. And when everything feels important, everything starts taking your time. That's how your schedule slowly stops belonging to you. So let's make this practical. Here are 4 phrases you can actually use. When you want a clear but respectful no, say, I really appreciate you thinking of me, but I don't have the capacity to give this the attention it deserves right now. When the request doesn't fit your priorities, say, that sounds important, but it doesn't fit my current priorities right now. When you're worried about overcommitting, say, I want to be realistic about my capacity. I don't want to commit and then underdeliver. And when you need time to decide, say, I'm flattered you asked. Let me think about it and get back to you tomorrow. If there's genuinely someone better suited, you can also say, I can't take this on myself, but I may know someone who would be a better fit. Just remember, you don't always need to offer an alternative. You don't have to replace every no with another favor. Sometimes, a clear and respectful no is enough. Here's what surprised me most. When you stop saying yes to everything, your yes becomes more valuable. Think about someone who agrees to every request, every favor, every project, and every invitation. Eventually, people stop seeing their yes as meaningful. It's simply expected. But when someone is selective with their commitments, their yes carries more weight. When they say, yes, I'll do it, you believe them because you know they had the option to say no. That's the deeper lesson. This isn't about becoming cold. It's not about rejecting every request, and it's not about treating your own needs as more important than everyone else's. It's about recognizing that your time and energy are limited. Every yes costs something. Sometimes the cost is small. Sometimes the cost is your focus, your sleep, your health, your relationships, or your ability to do the things that genuinely matter to you. So before you say yes, pause. Ask yourself, do I actually want to do this? Can I do it properly? Does it fit the life I'm trying to build? And if the answer is no, you don't have to panic. You don't need a dramatic excuse, and you don't need to feel guilty for having limits. You can simply be honest. You can say, I appreciate you asking, but I can't commit to that right now. And sometimes, that's all you need. Because saying no doesn't make you selfish, and saying yes doesn't automatically make you kind. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is be honest before you make a promise you can't keep. Your yes should mean something. And to make your yes meaningful, you sometimes have to learn how to say no. So here's your challenge. Think about one thing you've recently said yes to that you actually wanted to decline. Something specific, not a vague idea. One actual commitment. Now, think about whether you can realistically change it. If it's a future commitment, use one of the phrases from this video. If it's an ongoing responsibility, have an honest conversation about your capacity. And next time someone asks you for something, don't answer automatically. Pause, think, and then give an answer you can actually stand behind. Because a clear no is often more respectful than a resentful yes. A resentful yes eventually shows up in half-effort, late replies, missed deadlines, or tension nobody can quite explain. But when you say no honestly, everyone knows where they stand. And that's valuable. The fewer things you say yes to without thinking, the more your real yes starts to mean. People know that when you commit, you mean it. That's the real shift. It's not about becoming someone who refuses everything. It's about becoming someone whose word people can trust because you don't hand out your commitment automatically. You give it intentionally. So tell me in the comments, what's one thing you're finally going to say no to this week? And if you enjoy practical ideas inspired by Japanese philosophy, communication, culture, and everyday life, subscribe to The Japanese Way. Because sometimes, the smallest change in the way you think can completely change the way you live. See you in the next one.